Welcome to Gospel Walk, the podcast where we explore the deeper theological dimensions of Christ Academy's articles and seminars. Modern culture tends to view forgiveness as a polite transaction. We see it as a courteous resetting of the moral scales after a minor offense. But in the first century, biblical forgiveness was a socially disruptive force. It ignored social hierarchies and personal pride to do something much more abrasive. This brings us to a pressing question. Why do some believers exhibit a radical, almost uncomfortable level of love and joy, while others remain cold, measuring, and judgmental? To find the answer, we have to look at the specific mechanics of debt and what happens to a person when they realize they can never pay it back. The Christ Academy article, Grace, Gratitude, and the Extravagant Heart, anchors this discussion in a specific historical moment found in the Gospel of Luke. The narrative drops us into a formal Greco-Roman dinner party hosted by Simon, a Pharisee. Simon filters the world through a strict lens of moral respectability, constantly measuring the human value of everyone in the room. Then, the protocol breaks. An uninvited, unnamed woman walks in. The entire town knows her by a single public reputation. She is a sinner. She bypasses the other guests, stands behind Jesus at his feet, and begins to weep openly. She washes his dusty feet with her tears, wipes them dry with her hair, and anoints them with expensive perfume. In this culture, a Jewish woman unbinding her hair in public was a severe taboo, reserved only for moments of the absolute deepest grief. This is a physical collision between rigid respectability and raw desperation. Looking at these two postures side by side, we are forced to ask, which one actually reflects citizenship in the kingdom of God? Simon watches this and silently issues a verdict. He judges the woman for being unclean, and he judges Jesus, assuming a true teacher would have the discernment to push her away. Simon's spiritual blindness is on full display. He evaluates Jesus strictly through the metric of morality, completely missing the metric of mercy. Jesus, reading Simon's silent judgment, intervenes. He introduces the economic logic of grace using a short parable about a moneylender. Jesus describes two debtors. One owes 500 denarii, the other 50. Neither can pay, so the moneylender cancels both debts simultaneously. Which debtor will love him more? Simon admits, the one who had the larger debt canceled. The sequence of events is vital here. The woman's scandalous actions followed her forgiveness. She wasn't paying a fee to receive mercy. Her tears were the overflow of a grace she had already experienced. This exact dynamic appears centuries earlier in the Old Testament. In Psalm 32, King David records his personal testimony regarding the mechanics of forgiveness. David contrasts the crushing, physical agony of carrying hidden sin with the profound, overwhelming relief of having a spiritual debt entirely covered by God. He defines a very specific psychological blessing, a spirit with no deceit. When you stop hiding, you get to experience a life of joyful authenticity. Compare David and the woman's free authenticity with Simon's exhausting existence. Simon is trapped by his need to constantly maintain an illusion of perfection in front of his peers. True spiritual joy cannot survive while we hide behind a mask of respectability. It only blooms when our deepest, ugliest flaws are fully exposed and fully pardoned. The Apostle John provides the underlying logic for this kind of response. In his first epistle, John establishes a foundational truth. We love because he first loved us. Our love is entirely responsive to God's initial action. Authentic Christian love is never a self-generated duty. It isn't a forced exertion of willpower. It's an automatic reflex to unmerited mercy. This provides a clear diagnostic for our own faith. If you feel cold, judgmental, or stingy with your grace, you are suffering from Simon's disease. You have forgotten the magnitude of your own spiritual bankruptcy. Fully realizing that absolute bankruptcy destroys our pride, which keeps us distant from other people, and it destroys our despair, which keeps us distant from God. Understanding this theology demands a shift in how we live as forgiven people today. First, we have to practice open-hearted confession. We need to step out of hiding, stop curating our reputations, and abandon the exhausting habit of self-justification. Looking at this flow network, we see the second step, forgiving others. The ability to offer grace to people around us is directly connected to the massive, central infusion of grace God provided when He canceled our debt. Finally, we live without shame. Release past regrets. The transaction is closed. The label of debtor is gone, replaced by a seat at the table as a child. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Gospel Walk, as we explore the deep truths within Christ Academy's resources. You become a living answer to the world's pain the moment you realize there are no debts too great for His forgiveness.